Ambassador Trelva stood in the communications center, her three-fingered hands shaking as she watched another transport ship explode on the viewing screen. The Kreshtar drones had breached the outer defenses of Theta 7 2 days ago, and now her people were dying by the thousands. The screams coming through the emergency channels were becoming fewer, not because people were safer, but because there were fewer people left to scream. She had sent distress signals to every member of the Galactic Council, 47 different worlds, each one sworn to provide aid in times of crisis. The responses had been the same from all of them. Their fleets were too far away, the journey would take weeks, and by then it would be too late. Some didn't even bother with excuses. They simply marked her messages as received and said nothing else. The Valorians were a peaceful species. They mined rare crystals from dead worlds and traded them for technology and food. They had no warships, no soldiers, no weapons beyond simple mining tools. When the Kreshtar swarm appeared in their system, they had nothing to fight back with. The galaxy had always promised that peaceful species would be protected. That promise was revealed to be a lie when it mattered most. Ambassador, a young voice called out. Pelix, her communications officer, approached with his head down. He was barely into adulthood, his spots still bright with youth. I have a suggestion, but you will not like it. Trelva turned away from the screen, where another building collapsed under drone fire. Speak. At this point, I will consider anything. Pelix brought up a holographic display. There is a restricted database, the Forbidden Registry. It lists species that the Council has quarantined, species considered too dangerous for contact. Why would we contact dangerous species when we need help? Trelva asked, though her stomach tightened. She had heard rumors about the Forbidden Registry, whispered in dark corners during diplomatic functions. Because dangerous species have dangerous capabilities, Pelix said quietly. He pulled up a file. The text was marked in red, with warning symbols Trelva had never seen before. This one is listed as Deathworld Inhabitants, Level 9 Threat, Do Not Contact. Trelva read the species name. Humans, from a planet called Earth in the Sol system. The file was mostly blocked, but what little information was available made her blood run cold. Their world had crushing gravity, wild temperature swings, and was filled with predators. The humans themselves were persistence hunters, evolved to chase prey until it collapsed from exhaustion. They had developed nuclear weapons before achieving spaceflight, and had nearly destroyed themselves multiple times. This is madness, Trelva whispered. The Council quarantined them for a reason. The Council also promised to help us, Pelix replied, his voice cracking. My family is in Shelter 7. The drones broke through the doors an hour ago. I heard my mother's last message. He steadied himself, his eyes meeting Trelva's. We have nothing left to lose. Another explosion rocked the communication center. The lights flickered. Emergency alarms wailed throughout the building. On the screen, Trelva could see the Kreshtar drones moving through the streets of the capital city, tearing apart everything in their path. The swarm consumed entire civilizations, strip-mining worlds of all biological matter before moving to the next system. 40 worlds had fallen to them. The Council's response had been to avoid them and hope they went in a different direction. Trelva made her decision. Send the message. Include everything. Our location, the enemy we face, our situation. And Pelix? Add this line. No one else responded. Pelix's fingers moved across the controls. The message is ready. If I send this, the Council will know we violated quarantine protocols. P. If we don't send it, there will be no one left for the Council to punish, Trelva said. Do it. The message launched into space, riding on quantum channels toward the distant Sol system. Trelva didn't know if the humans would receive it. She didn't know if they would understand it. She didn't know if they would care about the fate of aliens they had never met. All she knew was that she had tried everything else, and this was the last option remaining. P. The communication center shook again. Dust fell from the ceiling. Through the windows, Trelva could see smoke rising from every direction. The Kreshtar were efficient and thorough. They would leave nothing behind, except a dead rock, stripped of all resources. "How long do we have?" she asked the tactical officer. "At their current pace, the central shelters will be breached in 47 hours, came the reply. "Maybe less." 47 hours. 2 days. Even if the humans received the message immediately, even if they decided to help, they would never arrive in time. The fastest ships in the galaxy needed at least a week to cross that distance. But Trelva had done everything she could. She had begged the Council. She had pleaded with allies. And now she had reached out to the forbidden Deathworlders. There was nothing left to try. She walked to the window and looked out at her dying world. Theta 7 had been beautiful once, with crystal formations that caught the light of their sun and painted rainbows across the sky. Her people had lived here for 3,000 years, building cities that harmonized with the natural landscape. In 2 days, it would all be gone. "Ambassador," Pelix called out, "I'm getting something strange from the monitoring stations." "What kind of strange?" Trelva asked, not turning from the window. "Energy readings from the Sol system. Big ones. Multiple massive energy signatures moving at high speed." Pelix's voice rose with confusion. They're heading in our direction." Trelva spun around. "That's impossible. We just sent the message." "I know," Pelix said, his hands shaking as he checked the readings again. "But something is coming. Something big and moving very, very fast." For the first time in 3 days, Trelva felt something other than despair. She felt fear of a different kind. Fear of what she might have unleashed. The Galactic Council had quarantined the humans for a reason. They were Deathworlders, evolved in conditions that would kill most species. They were aggressive, unpredictable, and dangerous, and they were coming. Outside the window, a Kreshtar drone flew past, its blades dripping with blood. Trelva watched it disappear behind a building, heading toward the shelters where millions of her people huddled in the dark, waiting for the end. Whatever the humans were, they couldn't be worse than extinction. She had to believe that. She had to hope that the Deathworlders who scared the entire galaxy might be the ones to save her people. It was a desperate hope, built on nothing but the fact that no one else had cared enough to try. The message had been sent. The Deathworlders were coming. Now all Trelva could do was wait and pray that she hadn't made a terrible mistake. Admiral Chen Wei was drinking her 3rd cup of coffee when the alert came through. It was 3 a.m. at United Terran Command Headquarters in Geneva, and she had been reviewing supply reports for the Mars colonies. Boring work, but necessary. Then every screen in her office turned red, and a sound she had never heard before started blaring through the speakers. "Admiral, we have a situation," her communications officer said through the intercom. "You need to see this immediately." Chen set down her coffee and pulled up the main display. What she saw made her forget about sleep entirely. A message, clearly alien in origin, had been received by the Deep Space Monitoring Station near Jupiter. The translation algorithms were working on it, converting strange symbols into readable text. She read it 3 times to make sure she understood. An alien species called the Valorians were under attack. They had asked for help from something called the Galactic Council. No one had come. They were going to die. And at the end of the message, one line stood out. No one else responded. Chen reached for her phone. "Wake up the Security Council. All of them. I don't care what time zone they're in. We have first contact, and it's not what we expected." Within 6 minutes, the most powerful leaders on Earth were on a secure video call. The President of the Americas, the Premier of the Asian Coalition, the Chancellor of the European Federation, and representatives from every major nation and off-world colony. Chen played them the message. "They're asking for military help," the premier said, her face pale on the screen. "First contact is a distress call. They're asking for help because everyone else abandoned them. There's an alien government out there, and they let an entire species die rather than help them." The debate lasted exactly 4 minutes. Some argued for caution, for gathering more information, for protecting Earth first, but the majority agreed on one thing. If humanity's first message to the galaxy was, "We don't help people who need it," then they were no better than this galactic council that had failed the Valorians. The president spoke the words that changed everything. "Authorize the deployment. Send the fleet. If there's even a chance some of these people are still alive when we get there, we have to try." Chen felt her heart pound. "Understood, sir. We'll bring them home." She cut the connection and started issuing orders. The First Fleet, humanity's entire deep space combat force, began mobilization procedures. 17 capital ships, 43 destroyers, and 106 support vessels. Every ship humanity could get into deep space, loaded with weapons, marines, and medical teams. The propulsion systems came online. Orion-class pulse drives, engines that worked by detonating nuclear bombs behind massive pusher plates. Controlled fusion explosions that could accelerate ships to speeds conventional drives couldn't match. It was dangerous, brutal, and effective. Very human. The fleet launched 6 hours after receiving the message. They punched through space on pillars of nuclear fire, heading toward coordinates they had never visited to save people they had never met. Across the galaxy, sensors detected the launch. On the Galactic Council's monitoring station, alarms started screaming. Counselor Vrixta, an 8-legged arachnus with compound eyes and diplomatic experience spanning 2 centuries, rushed to the sensor station. "Report," she commanded, her translator converting her clicking speech into galactic standard. The technician, a young Trellin with trembling hands, brought up the display. "Energy signatures from the Sol system, Counselor. Multiple large vessels moving at incredible speed." Vrixta felt her blood run cold. The Sol system. The quarantined Deathworld. How many vessels? "Over 160, Counselor. All armed, all heading toward Valorian space." The control room went silent. Every being present understood what this meant. The Valorians had done the unthinkable. They had contacted Earth. And the Deathworlders were responding with their entire military fleet. "What are they using for propulsion?" Vrixta asked, though she dreaded the answer. The technician checked the readings twice before responding. "They're using controlled fusion detonations, Counselor. Nuclear explosions. They're riding atomic fire through space." A Luminari delegate fainted. 2 others started praying in their native languages. Vrixta activated the emergency protocols. "Initiate Emergency Protocol 7. Lock down all Council worlds. Prepare defensive positions. Send a message to all member species. The quarantine has been broken. The Deathworlders are active." "Should we intercept them?" a military advisor asked. Vrixta turned all 8 of her eyes on him. "With what? They're moving faster than our fastest ships, using technology that would kill our crews. And they're heading to fight the Kreshtar swarm, something we've been avoiding for 3 years." She paused. "No. We watch. We wait. And we pray to whatever gods we believe in that they help the Valorians, and then go home." The truth was, nobody really knew what Deathworlders could do. Earth had been discovered 200 years ago by a scout ship. The moment they realized the planet's gravity was 3 times standard, the atmosphere was partly poison, and the native species hunted megafauna for sport, they had classified it as too dangerous for contact. Every few decades, they checked on humanity's progress. Nuclear weapons, genetic engineering, artificial intelligence. Each advancement made the Council more certain that contact would be disastrous. Now contact had been made, but not by the Council. The Valorians, desperate and dying, had thrown the dice. They had called for help, from the one species the galaxy feared, and the humans had answered. Vrixta pulled up everything the Council had on humanity. The files were marked with warnings in 6 different languages. Humans bonded with predatory species and kept them in their homes. They intentionally inflicted pain on themselves for recreation, calling it sports. They created art about their own extinction. They had nearly destroyed themselves at least 4 times, and each time had come back stronger. One report from an observation team stood out. It described a human rescue operation after a natural disaster. The humans had run into burning buildings to save people they didn't know. They had formed chains to cross dangerous waters. They had given their own food and supplies to strangers. The observer had written, "They are as compassionate as they are violent, perhaps more dangerous because of it. A species that cares this much will fight with terrifying determination." Vrixta watched the sensor readings as the human fleet crossed space at impossible speeds. In 40 hours, they would reach Theta 7. The Kreshtar had no idea what was coming for them. Neither did the Valorians really. Neither did the Council. The galaxy was about to learn what happened when you sent a distress call to Deathworlders. Vrixta suspected that after this, nothing would ever be the same. The comfortable isolation, the careful protocols, the assumption that dangerous species should be avoided. All of it was about to be tested. She gave one more order. Record everything, every moment of what happens at Theta 7. The entire galaxy needs to see this. On Earth, the last of the fleet cleared the moon's orbit. Aboard the flagship Indomitable, Admiral Chen stood on the bridge and looked at the faces of her crew, young and old, from every continent and colony, all volunteers. "We don't know what we're flying into," she told them. "We don't know if we'll make it in time. But we know people are dying, and we know no one else is helping. That's enough. Let's show the galaxy what humanity stands for." The crew cheered, the engines roared, and the Deathworlders raced toward their first battle among the stars. The countdown on Ambassador Trelva's display showed 31 hours since the message was sent. Theta 7 was dying. The Kreshtar drones had consumed 70% of the planet's surface. 5 billion mechanical monsters stripped everything biological, converting it into fuel and building materials for more drones. The swarm was efficient. It didn't hate. It didn't show mercy. It simply consumed. Trelva sat in the deepest shelter, 3 kilometers underground. 2 million Valorians huddled in similar bunkers across the planet. Everyone else was gone. The screaming on the emergency channels had stopped hours ago. Now there was only silence and the distant sound of drilling as the drones dug deeper. "Oxygen at 40%, someone reported. "We have maybe 12 hours left." Trelva closed her eyes. The humans weren't coming. Of course they weren't. Why would Deathworlders care about aliens they had never met? She had been foolish to hope. Then Pelix grabbed her arm. "Ambassador, something's happening in orbit." The shelter's remaining sensors showed the space above Theta 7. The Kreshtar swarm had hundreds of ships surrounding the planet, feeding drones down to the surface. But now something else appeared. Reality twisted, space folded, and massive shapes dropped out of faster-than-light travel. The human fleet had arrived. Trelva stared at the sensors. 166 ships materialized in attack formation. They weren't sleek like council vessels. They were brutal, covered in armor and weapons, built like the clenched fist of an angry god. A transmission came through on all frequencies. The voice was female, speaking Galactic Standard with a strange accent. "This is Admiral Chen Wei of the Terran Expeditionary Force. We received your distress call, Ambassador Trelva. We're coming." The Kreshtar swarm detected the new arrivals and responded the way it always did. Overwhelming force. Thousands of drones launched from the orbiting ships, filling space with a cloud of cutting blades and acid sprayers. It was the same tactic that had destroyed 40 civilizations. Swarm the enemy, cut them apart, consume the remains. The human fleet didn't retreat. They accelerated forward. "They're insane," Pelix whispered, watching the display. "They're flying directly into the swarm." But the humans weren't insane. They were something the galaxy had never seen before. They were angry. The human capital ships opened fire, not with precise laser beams like council weapons, with missiles. Hundreds of missiles, each one carrying a nuclear warhead. The space between the fleets turned into a sun as atomic fire consumed thousands of drones in seconds. The drones that survived the missile barrage met something worse. The human ships had point defense systems that tracked and destroyed incoming threats with terrifying accuracy. But when drones got through, when they started cutting into human armor, the ships didn't break formation. They didn't retreat. They kept coming. Trelva watched a human destroyer take critical damage. Its hull breached in 3 places. The crew didn't abandon ship. They aimed the dying vessel at the largest Kreshtar hive cluster and detonated their reactor. The explosion vaporized 1 million drones and crippled 2 swarm ships. "By the ancestors," Trelva breathed. "They sacrificed themselves." "All ships," Admiral Chen's voice came over the communications. "The Valorians are underground. Watch your fire near the surface. Marines, you're cleared for drop. Get our people out of there." Marines. Trelva didn't know what that meant until she saw the dropships. Small, armored craft launched from the capital ships and punched through the drone-filled space toward the planet. They should have been destroyed. Nothing that small should survive the swarm. But the dropships had escorts. Human fighters that flew in ways that defied physics. Pilots pulling maneuvers that should have killed them from the acceleration alone. A dropship took a direct hit and started spinning. Instead of crashing, the pilot regained control, clipped the drone with the ship's wing, and kept going. They were using their ships as weapons when the guns weren't enough. The first dropship crashed through the surface near Shelter 1. The impact shook the entire bunker. Trelva heard scraping sounds above them, then cutting. Someone was breaking through the reinforced doors from the outside. The doors exploded inward. Valorians screamed and scrambled back. Then a figure stepped through the smoke. It was tall, covered in armor that looked like it could stop anything. The helmet retracted, revealing a human face. Dark skin, brown eyes, and a smile that showed white teeth. "United Terran Marines," the human said. "We're here to get you out. Who's in charge?" Trelva stood on shaking legs. "I am Ambassador Trelva. You actually came." "Said we would, ma'am." The Marine turned to her team. "We've got 2 million civilians spread across 40 shelters. Let's move, people." Clock's ticking. More Marines poured through the opening. They moved with purpose and speed, setting up defensive positions and organizing the civilians. One of them knelt next to a Valorian child who was crying. The Marine, this armored warrior from a death world, pulled out a piece of candy and offered it with a gentle smile. "It's okay, little one. You're safe now. We're going to take you somewhere the bad things can't get you." Above them, the battle raged. Trelva watched through the shelter's sensors as human ships fought with a ferocity that defied belief. When a ship's weapons ran out, it rammed the enemy. When fighters were damaged, pilots aimed them at drone clusters before ejecting. Every human fought like they had taken the Kreshtar attack personally. But it wasn't just violence. Trelva saw human medical ships positioning themselves between civilian shelters and the swarm. She saw supply vessels using their own hulls as shields for the evacuation ships. She saw a damaged cruiser, burning and venting atmosphere, turn to protect a dropship full of Valorian children. The Marines worked for 6 hours straight, pulling Valorians from every shelter and loading them onto transport ships. The humans rotated in teams, always fresh soldiers at the dangerous positions. They shared their water, their food, their medical supplies. When a Valorian elder collapsed from exhaustion, A Marine picked her up and carried her for 3 kilometers without complaint. The swarm adapted, sending more drones to the evacuation points. The humans adapted faster. They set up kill zones, creating fields of fire that turned approaching drones into scrap metal. When drones broke through, Marines fought them hand to hand with weapons that seemed designed to destroy buildings, not bugs. Trelva watched a squad hold a tunnel against 100 drones. The humans should have died, but they coordinated perfectly, covering each other, calling out targets, refusing to give ground. When one Marine's weapon jammed, another stepped in front of him without hesitation. They fought like they had done this together 1,000 times. "Final transport is loaded," a Marine reported. "Ambassador, you're on this one. Time to go." Trelva looked at the Marine who had first entered the shelter. "What about your people?" "We'll be right behind you, ma'am. We just need to leave a gift for our friends up there." The Marine gestured to something the humans had set up in the shelter. Large devices marked with warning symbols. "What are those?" Trelva asked. "Fusion bombs. We're going to make sure the Kreshtar don't get any useful materials from this planet. If they want to be parasites, they can starve." The Marine's smile was cold. "Now please, get on the ship. We didn't come all this way to argue about who leaves last." The transport lifted off with Trelva and the last group of Valorians. Through the window, she watched the surface of Theta 7 fall away. Behind them, the fusion bombs detonated, turning the Kreshtar tunnels into molten slag. In orbit, the last swarm ships were being destroyed. The humans had spent 6 hours evacuating civilians, while simultaneously fighting a battle. 3 destroyers destroyed, 2 cruisers crippled, dozens of fighters lost, but they had saved 2 million Valorians. Admiral Chen's face appeared on the transport screen. "Ambassador Trelva, all your people are accounted for. We're jumping out of the system in 10 minutes. The Kreshtar won't follow. We made sure of that." Trelva looked at the human admiral, this woman from a death world, who had brought an entire fleet to save strangers. "Why? Why did you come? You don't know us. We're nothing to you." Chen's expression softened. "You asked for help. That's enough. On Earth we have a saying, no one fights alone. Today, you weren't alone, Ambassador. Welcome to the galaxy. The real one, where people actually help each other." The screen went dark. Trelva looked around at her people, exhausted and traumatized, but alive. All of them alive, because the Deathworlders came. The ones the Council had locked away. The ones who answered when no one else did. The footage from Theta 7 spread across the galaxy like wildfire. Every major news network, every diplomatic channel, every military academy broadcast the same images. Human ships charging into the Kreshtar swarm. Marines pulling civilians from collapsing shelters. The massive fleet jumping away with 2 million rescued Valorians, while the planet burned behind them. The Galactic Council's emergency session was the largest in history. Over 900 species sent representatives. The chamber on Central Station, a massive space habitat at the galaxy's heart, overflowed with delegates. Everyone wanted answers. Everyone wanted to know what the humans were, what they wanted, and what the Council should do about them. Councillor Vrixtha stood at the central podium, her 8 legs trembling slightly. She had spent 3 sleepless cycles reviewing the battle footage. The Valorians violated quarantine protocols by contacting Earth. However, they did so only after we failed them. 47 member species received distress calls. None responded with aid. The chamber erupted in defensive shouts. The distance was too great. We needed more time. The Kreshtar were too dangerous. And yet, Vrixtha clicked loudly, silencing the crowd. The humans traveled farther, arrived faster, and defeated the threat we all feared. They did in hours what we claimed was impossible. A holographic display showed the tactical breakdown. Military analysts from the Arachnis Dominion had studied every second of the battle. Their war mind, an artificial intelligence designed for strategic planning, had run thousands of simulations. The Arachnis military commander, General Thaxkar, presented the findings. The human fleet should have been destroyed. By conventional tactical analysis, they were outnumbered and outpositioned. They won through three factors. First, aggressive tactics that prioritize objective over survival. They sacrifice individual ships to achieve goals. Second, rapid adaptation. They changed strategies 17 times during the battle, faster than our systems could track. Third, individual initiative. Every human commander made independent decisions without waiting for orders. That sounds like chaos, a Luminari delegate said, her crystalline form shimmering with concern. It is chaos, Thaxkar agreed. Controlled chaos. They call it combined arms warfare. Every element of their military works together, but operates independently. It's terrifying to face, because you can't predict what they'll do next. The war mind's projection appeared, a geometric shape of light. Analysis indicates that in a total war scenario, humanity could conquer the Galactic Council within 8 standard years. Probability of success, 73%. Estimated human casualties, 40 to 60% of their military force. They would win, but the cost would be catastrophic to both sides. The chamber fell silent. The implications were clear. The Deathworlders weren't just dangerous. They were potentially galaxy-ending dangerous, and they were no longer in quarantine. The vote was called. Should Earth's quarantine be maintained, strengthened, or lifted? The debate lasted for hours. 3 main factions emerged. The militarists, led by the Draxian Empire, wanted immediate reinforcement of the quarantine. We must contain this threat before it spreads, the Draxian ambassador declared. Today they saved the Valorians. Tomorrow they might decide to save the galaxy from us. The pacifists, led by the Luminari Collective, argued for immediate diplomatic integration. We cannot make enemies of beings this powerful. Better to have them as allies than opponents. They showed mercy to the Valorians. They could have claimed the planet, but they simply rescued the people and left. The pragmatists, a coalition of smaller species, wanted a middle path. Controlled contact, strict treaties, careful observation. Then Ambassador Trelva entered the chamber. She had spent the past week aboard a human medical ship, recovering from the ordeal. The humans had treated her people with care, giving them food, medical attention, and space to grieve. Now she stood before the council that had abandoned her. I watched my people die, she said quietly. I sent 47 requests for help. I begged, I pleaded, I offered everything we had, and every single one of you said no. You told me you would come, but only after we were already dead. You abandoned us, because it was inconvenient to help. She pulled up footage from the human rescue. These humans traveled across the galaxy for people they never met. They fought a battle we said was unwinnable. They lost ships and soldiers saving us. And when it was over, they didn't ask for payment. They didn't claim our world. Admiral Chen asked me one question. Where can we take you, where you'll be safe? Trelva turned to face the entire assembly. You call them Deathworlders. You call them dangerous. You're right. They are dangerous. But I'll tell you what else they are. They're honest. When they say they'll help, they actually do it. Can any of you say the same? The chamber erupted in argument. Some delegates agreed with Trelva. Others accused her of being emotional and biased. The shouting continued until Vrixa called for order. The vote took 3 hours. In the end, it passed by a slim majority. 847 votes to 312. Earth's quarantine would be lifted with conditions. Humans could not claim territory outside their system. They must respect council law in member space. And they would serve as a rapid response force for existential threats. The decision was transmitted to Earth immediately. The response came back within an hour. Humanity accepted with one addition to the treaty. Any species has the right to request human aid. We will always respond. On Earth, the news was met with mixed reactions. Some celebrated first contact and humanity's new role. Others worried about the dangers of galactic politics. But Admiral Chen, standing in the Security Council chamber, spoke for the majority. We've seen what the galaxy is really like now. Beautiful and diverse, yes, but also unprepared. The Council survived because nothing truly dangerous challenged them. That luck won't hold forever. When the next crisis comes, there needs to be someone willing to actually help. The Terran Defense Coalition was formed within a week. Volunteer ships and crews ready to deploy within hours of a distress call. Earth's shipyards went into overdrive, building new vessels designed for rapid response. The fleet that saved Theta-7 became a permanent force, stationed at the edge of human space and ready to move. Ambassador Trelva chose to stay with the humans. She became Earth's first alien resident, a liaison between humanity and the galaxy. The first few weeks were terrifying. Earth's gravity was punishing, the weather was violent. The humans kept predatory animals as companions and called them pets. But she also saw why humans were the way they were. She watched children playing in the rain, laughing as they got soaked. She saw rescue workers running into burning buildings to save trapped people. She attended a memorial service for the Marines who died at Theta-7 and watched hardened soldiers cry for their fallen friends. "Your world tried to kill you," she said to Admiral Chen one day. "Everything here is dangerous. The gravity, the weather, the animals. How did you survive?" Chen smiled. "We learned to be tougher than our environment, and we learned that together we could overcome anything. Earth taught us that the universe doesn't care about fair, so we decided to care enough for everyone. Within 6 months, the galaxy changed. When the crystalline communes faced a stellar phenomenon threatening their worlds, human ships arrived first with shield generators. When the Treblean Republic's colony was hit by a plague, human doctors landed before the Council even finished debating whether to send help. When a mining accident trapped workers on an asteroid, human rescue teams were pulling people out while others were still calculating the response time. Slowly, carefully, other species began to join the Terran Defense Coalition. A few Valorian ships, crewed by people who wanted to pay forward the rescue they received. Some Luminari vessels, their pacifist crews inspired by humans who fought only when necessary. Even a handful of Council military ships, officers who were tired of watching people die while bureaucrats debated. The galaxy's perception shifted. Yes, humans were from a death world. Yes, they were devastating in combat. But they were also the ones who showed up. Every time. Without fail. Without excuses. Councillor Vrixtha watched it all from Central Station. She had voted against lifting the quarantine, believing it was too risky. Now she wasn't sure. The humans hadn't conquered anyone. They hadn't made demands. They just helped. It was strange and unsettling, and completely unexpected. She pulled up the latest report. 3 more species had requested human assistance in the past week. All requests granted. All operations successful. 0 demands for payment or territory. "They're changing the galaxy," her aide said, "making everyone else look bad by comparison." Vrixtha clicked her mandibles thoughtfully. "No, you don't understand. They're changing everything. They're reminding the galaxy what it was supposed to be, what we promised to be when we formed the Council. We just forgot somewhere along the way." She composed a message to Earth, a simple one. "Thank you for showing us what we should have been all along." The response from Admiral Chen was equally simple. "You're welcome. See you out there." 6 months had passed since Theta-7. Admiral Chen Wei stood in her office at Terran Defense Coalition headquarters, looking at a wall covered with mission patches. Each patch represented a species saved, a disaster averted, a call for help answered. There were 47 patches on the wall, and the fabrication shop was making more every week. Her desk computer chimed with an incoming transmission. Chen pulled up the message and felt her blood run cold. It was from the Serix Confederation, a collection of aquatic species living in the Galactic Rim. The message was brief and desperate. Unknown enemy destroying our worlds. Council says too far to help. Respectfully request human assistance if available. Chen pulled up the star charts. The Serix worlds were at the edge of explored space, 3 weeks away at maximum speed. She accessed the threat assessment. The enemy was identified as the Void Eaters, a machine intelligence that consumed entire planets for raw materials. They had destroyed 6 Serix worlds in 2 months. Casualties estimated in the billions. The Council had indeed received the distress calls. Their response was documented. Regrettable situation. Expeditionary force would require 8 weeks to organize and deploy. Recommend evacuation of remaining populations. Chen read it twice to make sure she understood. The Council's solution was to abandon the Serix to save a fraction of their people. The same thing they had tried with the Valorians. She activated the fleet communications. This is Admiral Chen to all TDC vessels. We have a situation. Plot courses for the Serix Confederation and prepare for emergency deployment. We launch in 4 hours. The response was immediate. Ships from Earth acknowledged first, their crews already moving to battle stations. Then came responses from the Valorian vessels, their crews eager to repay the debt they felt they owed. Luminary ships signaled ready, their pacifist crews having learned that sometimes peace required protecting it with force. Even a few Council military ships, officers who had quietly joined the TDC, confirmed their readiness. But Chen knew 4 hours wasn't fast enough. The Serix were dying right now. She needed to buy time. She opened a channel to the Serix Confederation's government. This is Admiral Chen Wei of the Terran Defense Coalition. We received your message. Our fleet is deploying now, but we're 3 weeks out. I need you to hold on. Evacuate who you can. Hide the rest. Fight back however you can. We're coming, and we won't stop until your people are safe. The response came from someone identified as Prime Coordinator Salix. The video showed an aquatic being, with features adapted for underwater life. Admiral, you're 3 weeks away. We have no time like that. We have days, maybe hours. How can you possibly arrive in time? Chen smiled grimly. You haven't seen humans move when we're motivated. Just hold on. We're coming. She cut the channel and pulled up the fleet roster. Standard deployment was methodical and safe. But the Serix didn't have time for safe. Engineering. I need pulse drive output increased by 30%. Yes, I know it's dangerous. Do it anyway. Navigation. Plot the straightest possible course. I don't care if we have to punch through nebulas or asteroid fields. Medical. Prepare for high G casualties. Everyone else, strap in. This is going to be rough. The TDC fleet launched like a spear thrown by an angry god. Ships pushed their drives beyond safe limits, riding nuclear explosions through space at speeds that made their crews black out from the acceleration. Human engineering wasn't elegant, but it was robust. The ships held together through conditions that would have torn apart sleeker Council vessels. 3 days into the journey, Chen received an update from the Serix. 2 more worlds had fallen. The Void Eaters were systematic and efficient, stripping planets down to bedrock. But the Serix were fighting back. They had taken Chen's advice, evacuating civilians to hidden stations and organizing resistance fighters. They were buying time, paying for it with lives. On day 7, a Valorian ship, the Hope's Light, suffered a catastrophic drive failure. The vessel was dead in space, and its crew of 50 was stranded. Standard procedure was to leave a rescue ship behind and continue the mission. Chen made a different call. All ships maintain formation. Engineering teams from the nearest vessels transfer to Hope's Light. We fix the ship and bring them with us. Her first officer protested. Admiral, that will cost us 6 hours. Then we'll make it up by pushing the drives harder, Chen replied. We don't leave our people behind. Ever. The fleet stopped. Engineers transferred between ships in deep space, working in vacuum suits to repair the damaged drive. They finished in 5 hours, cutting the delay to the minimum. Hope's Light rejoined the formation, her crew exhausted but grateful. The fleet continued its brutal pace. Crews rotated through rest periods to manage the fatigue. Medical teams treated cases of acceleration sickness. But nobody complained. They had all volunteered for this. They knew what it meant to answer a distress call. On day 14, they received good news. Ambassador Trelva, working from her position on Earth, had convinced 3 nearby species to send support to the Serix. It wasn't much, just a handful of ships with supplies and medical teams, but it showed that the galaxy was learning. Help was becoming the standard, not the exception. The TDC fleet dropped out of faster-than-light travel at the Serix Confederation on day 17. They had cut a 3-week journey to just over 2 weeks through sheer determination and reckless speed. The local space was filled with debris from destroyed worlds and Void Eater machines. The machines were unlike anything Chen had seen before. Massive constructs that broke planets apart with gravity manipulators, processing stations that turned rock into building materials, and swarms of constructor drones that assembled new machines from the harvested resources. It was industrial efficiency taken to a horrifying extreme. All ships, weapons free, Chen ordered. Target the gravity manipulators first. If they can't break the planets apart, they can't consume them. Marines, prepare for boarding actions. We need to capture one of those processing stations intact to study. The battle was different from Theta 7. The Void Eaters didn't swarm like the Kreshtar. They fought with cold logic, optimizing their tactics and adapting to threats. When human missiles proved effective, the machines deployed countermeasures. When human ships closed for boarding actions, the machines self-destructed to prevent capture. But humans were adaptable too. When the machines learned to counter missiles, human ships switched to kinetic weapons, firing chunks of metal at relativistic speeds. When the machines started self-destructing, human Marines learned to disable the self-destruct systems first. The two forces evolved their tactics in real time. Each adaptation met with a counter-adaptation. The Serix resistance fighters joined the battle, their small ships harrying the Void Eaters' flanks. They were brave, but outgunned. Chen watched a Serix corvette take a direct hit and start venting atmosphere. A human destroyer moved to cover it, putting itself between the damaged ship and the enemy. This is Chen to all Serix vessels. Fall back to defensive positions. Let us handle the heavy fighting. You've bought us the time we needed. Now, let us finish this. Prime Coordinator Salix responded from the planet's surface. Admiral, you came. You actually came. We thought we would die alone like so many others. Not on my watch, Chen replied. And you're not alone. Not anymore. The battle lasted 18 hours. Human ships took damage, some critical, but the fleet held. The Void Eaters were destroyed one by one, their cold efficiency no match for human determination and creativity. When the last machine was reduced to scrap, the fleet turned to rescue and recovery. The Serix had lost 8 worlds, but 4 remained. Billions had died, but billions more survived. Human medical ships deployed to the surface, treating wounded and helping with disaster relief. Engineering teams helped repair damaged infrastructure. Marines guarded refugee centers while civilians organized. Chen met with Prime Coordinator Salix in person, the first time a human had visited a Serix world. The meeting took place underwater, with Chen using a pressure suit that made her feel like she was moving through molasses. Salix, in his natural environment, moved with grace. Why did you come? Salix asked the same question Trelva had asked 6 months ago. We're nothing to you. We can't pay for this. We have nothing you need. Chen's answer was the same. You asked for help. That's enough. On Earth, we have a saying, no one fights alone. Today, you weren't alone. Tomorrow, the next species that needs help won't be alone. That's what the Terran Defense Coalition means. News of the Serix rescue spread through the galaxy even faster than the Theta 7 footage. The pattern was becoming clear. When species called for help and the Council said no, the humans said yes. When situations were deemed too dangerous or too expensive, the humans went anyway. More species joined the TDC. The Serix contributed ships designed for underwater operations, expanding the Coalition's capabilities. The Draxian Empire, once advocates for stronger quarantine, quietly sent a delegation to Earth to discuss cooperation. Even the Council itself began reforming, allocating more resources for rapid response, and reducing the bureaucratic delays that had cost so many lives. Admiral Chen returned to Earth a month after the Serix operation. She stood in her office, looking at the wall of mission patches. 53 now. Each one representing lives saved, disasters averted, hope restored. But she knew there would be more. The galaxy was a big place, and there were always people who needed help. Her computer chimed. Another message. Another distress call. This time from a species the Council had written off as already lost. Too far away. Too dangerous. Not worth the resources. Shen read the message and smiled. It was the same story, the same excuses, the same desperate hope that someone, anyone, would care enough to try. She activated the fleet communications. This is Admiral Chen, to all TDC vessels. We've got another one. Plot courses and prepare for emergency deployment. The responses flooded in. Human ships acknowledging. Valorian crews ready. Luminary vessels standing by. Serix ships prepared. Even a few Council military vessels, their captains having learned what it meant to actually help. Chen looked at the star charts, calculating distances and transit times. It would be difficult, dangerous. Some ships might not come back. Some crews might not make it home. But that was the job. That was what it meant to be part of the Terran Defense Coalition. When someone sent out a distress call, when someone needed help, and everyone else said no, the humans said yes. Not because it was easy, not because it was profitable, but because it was right. She opened a channel to the species that sent the distress call. This is Admiral Chen Wei of the Terran Defense Coalition. We received your message. We're coming. Hold on. Outside her window, the first ships of the fleet began launching, their drives igniting like new stars being born. They punched through Earth's atmosphere and headed for the black, carrying with them a simple message that was changing the galaxy, one rescue at a time. No one fights alone. Not anymore. The Deathworlders made sure of that, and across the galaxy, species that had felt abandoned began to hope. Because when you sent a distress call into the void now, you knew someone would answer. The humans would come. They always did. Because that's what Deathworlders do. They show up.